Success is the leading indicator of failure. We believe we are building monuments, but history shows we are merely stacking bricks on a melting glacier. We live our lives in a brief slice of time, moving like ants preoccupied with carrying crumbs, rarely looking up to see the patterns of the tides that will eventually sweep the crumbs away. The rise and decline of empires is not a tragedy. It is a logical sequence of human behavior. We build, we prosper, we overextend, and then we restructure. To understand where we are, we must first understand the big cycle. It is an archetypical pattern that has repeated for over 500 years across the Dutch, the British, and the American empires. It is driven by human productivity, which generally evolves in an upward-pointing corkscrew, but it is the turbulent wiggles around that line that define our lives. Dalio identifies 17 major forces, but 4 are paramount: the debt cycle, the internal wealth gap, the external rivalry, and the acts of nature. A new order begins after a cleansing storm. A war or revolution that wipes out the old weaknesses, typically too much debt. This leads to a peaceful period of rebuilding where wealth is created productively. But prosperity breeds its own destruction. As we become rich, we become expensive. We become less productive and more indulgent. We begin to borrow against the future to maintain a lifestyle we can no longer afford. It is a story as old as time, yet it surprises us every single time it reaches its inevitable conclusion. Money is not wealth, it is a medium of exchange and a storehold of value. But through history, governments have found it impossible to resist the temptation to manufacture it. The cycle moves in 3 stages. Stage 1 is hard money like gold or silver where no trust is required. Stage 2 is the claim on hard money, paper notes that promise to give you the metal. This feels efficient, and banks realize they can lend out more notes than they have metal in the vault. This creates a boom, but it also creates a ticking time bomb. Eventually, the claims exceed the assets and a run on the bank begins. To stop the collapse, the government moves to stage 3, fiat money. They sever the link to the physical asset and print currency without restriction. In 1971, the United States did exactly this. It feels like magic at first, but it is an illusion of wealth. When you print money, you are essentially taxing those who hold it. And when the holders realize their buying power is evaporating, they flee. They run back to hard money or to the assets of a rising rival. Looking at the world today, with interest rates near zero and massive monetization of debt, where do you think we are on this clock? Dalio measures an empire standing through 8 key indicators. Think of them as the vital signs of a civilization. It begins with education, not just skills but character and work ethic. Strong education leads to innovation and technology. This makes a nation cost competitive in the global market. As trade increases, the nation must build a strong military to protect its roots. Increased trade leads to higher economic output. And eventually, the nation develops a world-class financial center to attract capital. Finally, with a lag, its currency becomes the world's reserve status, the ultimate exorbitant privilege. But notice the sequence. Reserve status is the last to arrive and the last to leave. It often stays long after the underlying fundamentals, like education and competitiveness, have begun to rot. According to the April 2022 Power Index, the United States still ranks number 1 in financial centers and reserve currency, but it ranks 14th in cost competitiveness. The foundation is cracking, even while the crown still shines. The statistics for the United States today are sobering. Dalio's computer analysis suggests the empire is approximately 75% through its cycle. The country power score stands at 0.89, still ranked number 1, but the trajectory is down. Look at the internal order score, a Z-score of -2, categorized as high risk. Wealth and values gaps are the largest since the 1930 to 1945 period. Debt is at 274% of GDP. The government is printing money to monetize this debt because interest rate cuts no longer work. History tells us that when wealth gaps are huge and the economy contracts, internal conflict is inevitable. We see it in the polarization of the major parties. 95% of votes in Congress are now along party lines. The United States is an empire that has become uneconomical to support. Its costs of maintaining global influence are exceeding the revenue it brings in. It is the classic top phase, overextended and vulnerable. While the US is in a gradual decline, China is in a rapid ascent. Its empire score is level 0.76, ranked number 2, but look at its trajectory, rising rapidly in nearly every category. China is now the largest exporter in the world, capturing 14% of global trade. Its education system produces 3 times more college graduates in science and technology than the United States. Its infrastructure and investment score is a staggering 2.7. Ranked number 1, but Dalio notes a critical weakness. China's reserve currency status is still very weak, a z-score of negative 0.6. It accounts for only 2% of global reserves. This is the lag we talked about. Its financial power has not yet caught up to its economic and military power. The conflict between the US and China is not just about trade. It is a collision of 2 fundamentally different philosophies, individualistic versus collectivist. History teaches us that when a rising power approaches comparability with the dominant power, the risks of conflict, both economic and military, rise to their peak. We are currently 77 years into the order that began in 1945. History shows that empires typically last about 250 years, but the big debt cycles within them last 50 to 75. We are classically near the end, the stage where debt burdens are too large for central banks to handle through normal means. This is the era of monetary policy 3, direct coordination between the government and the central bank to print money and give it to those in need. This keeps the system moving, but it devalues the currency. Dalio reminds us that no one policy maker owns the whole cycle. Each comes in for a slice of time and does what is expedient to survive the present. The hard truth is that reversing a decline is incredibly difficult. It requires working harder and consuming less. Something that is rarely popular in a polarized society. So we must prepare, not for the world as we want it to be, but for the world as history says it will likely be. History is a perpetual motion machine, and we are currently feeling its gears grind. The lesson of the 500 years we have examined tonight is clear. Debt eats equity, money feeds the hunger of debt, and the strong eventually become weak through the weight of their own success. The transition to a new order is rarely smooth, but it is inevitable. We are moving into an era where the illusion of financial wealth will be stripped away, leaving only the reality of productive capacity. Saving is not about the numbers on a screen. It is about providing insurance against an unpredictable future. Controlling your time and your dependencies is the ultimate dividend of wisdom. So, look inward tonight. Are you positioning your life based on the wiggles of the headlines, or based on the patterns of the tides? Success is often the architect of its own demise. As an empire reaches its peak, it naturally enters a phase of self-reinforcing decay. Dalio points out that prosperity leads to a fundamental shift in character. The generation that fought and sacrificed to build the wealth is replaced by a generation that inherits it. This younger generation is often less battle-hardened. They tend to value leisure more and hard work less. The society becomes expensive. And as it becomes expensive, it becomes uncompetitive. Think about it. When the richest nations begin to borrow from the poorest nations to maintain a lifestyle they can no longer earn, that is the first definitive signal of a relative wealth shift. In the 1980s, the United States began borrowing from the Chinese, whose per capita income was only 1/40th of an American's. It was an early warning sign that the gears of the big cycle were starting to turn in a new direction. To understand the fragility of our current financial system, we must look at the fall of the Dutch guilder. It is a perfect case study in the loss of trust. The Bank of Amsterdam began as a Type 1 system, hard money 100% backed by metal, but over time it morphed into a Type 2 system, creating more paper claims than there was gold in the vault. During the Fourth Anglo-Dutch War from 1780 to 1784, the bank was forced to print guilders to save the Dutch East India Company. Sound familiar? As depositors realized the bank was manufactured money to cover bad debts, they panicked. They turned their paper guilders in for physical gold and silver. The ratio of claims to metal skyrocketed. Eventually, the bank was wiped out of its holdings. And the guilder, once the world's undisputed reserve currency, simply ceased to be a storehold of wealth. The transition from hard money to fiat is always a desperate attempt to delay the inevitable. The British pound's exit from the stage was not a single event, but a chronic affair. Even after the United States overtook Britain in nearly every measure of power after World War II, the pound remained a primary reserve currency for over 20 years. This is because a reserve currency is like a language. Once it is woven into the fabric of international trade, it is incredibly difficult to replace. But the fundamentals always catch up. By 1947, the United Kingdom was essentially bankrupt. It had massive war debts and low reserves. When they attempted to restore convertibility, there was an immediate run on the pound. The British were forced to devalue by 30% against the dollar in 1949, then again in 1967, and again in 1971. Each devaluation was a confession of weakness. A realization that the empire's financial reality no longer matched its global ambitions. By the time the world realized the pound was no longer a safe storehold of wealth, the dollar had already built its own, even larger debt bubble. While the external rivalry with China takes the headlines, the internal disorder gauge for the United States is perhaps more alarming. Dalio's data shows that internal conflict in the U.S. is at its highest level since the period of 1930 to 1945. Look at the partisanship. Approximately 95% of the votes in the House and Senate are now along party lines. This level of polarization makes compromise impossible. When wealth gaps are large and the economy contracts, people become more extreme. Populism of the left and populism of the right emerge. They are often more inclined to fight than to follow the law. History teaches us that when a nation's people cannot work effectively together, they become vulnerable to both internal collapse and external attack. The United States currently has an internal order Z-score of -2. It is a red signal on the dashboard of history. The world is not just a two-player game. According to the April 2022 Power Index, we see shifting tides elsewhere. The Eurozone ranks number 3 with an empire score of 0.58. It remains strong in trade and reserve status, but it suffers from low expected growth and a weak military. Then look at India, ranked number 7. India is in a rapid ascent in terms of competitiveness and economic output. But it struggles with severe wealth gaps and a lack of innovation for its massive population. And Russia, ranked number 10, while it possesses a wealth of natural resources and a strong military, its internal order and governance are among the weakest of the major powers. Dalio's framework shows that no nation is immune to the big cycle. Each is at a different point on the curve. The question is not if they will shift, but when and how traumatically. We must face the world as it is, not as we wish it to be. We are currently 77 years into an order that began in 1945. Classically, this is the stage of overextension, large debts, high polarization, and a rising rival. History says the probabilities of a major shift are high. So, what is the principle for survival? Diversification, not just across assets, but across countries and currencies. Understanding that the reciprocating value of money and credit is the engine of asset prices. When the government manufactures a lot of money and credit, the value of that money falls. The key is to own productive assets that can withstand a currency devaluation. We are moving into an era where the illusion of financial wealth will be stripped away, leaving only the reality of productive capacity. Controlling your dependencies is the ultimate dividend. So step back for a moment and look inward. Are you positioning your life based on the wiggles of the headlines or based on the patterns of the tides? Let the question linger in the silence.